Hey. Oh, I'm on the wrong side. We gotta switch
No,
me
I
around.
thought you might not notice.
Oh my God. Can you switch me around?
I thought maybe we were just, someone else was driving today.
No, you're always driving. I'm just a passenger. I'm here. I'm along for the ride. Anyways, happy Thursday. I am coming to you guys from Consensus in Austin, Texas today in the beautiful Four Seasons lobby. So any background noise, I apologize. But here we are doing our thing. New episode of Go FUD Yourself, episode 51. I cannot believe that I missed our
50.
golden episode. It's golden, right? 50? Or is that
It
platinum?
is gold, but instead we had an AVAX episode. So
I'm wearing commemorative gold today to
it's a little late, JD.
to represent our 50th episode. This is actually this is not my 50th because I've missed 2 now. Want tomorrow. Anyways, what are we talking about today, Kiara?
Okay, first of all, you're at Consensus, yeah?
Yeah.
You're gonna tell us about Consensus. We gotta know because all the FOMO, right? All the folks at home. And then we're gonna talk about the States. Are you surprised? And what's going on with potential crypto debanking. That's kind of wild. We have to talk about BRICS. I've been holding on to the BRICS news so that you and I can talk about it. And I just smashed all the BRICS news of the last 3 days into one point. And then we're going to talk about a couple of really big companies that are quietly bullish on crypto.
Quietly bullish. All right, let's do it. Boom. All right, we're back.
Hey, Consensus, what are you doing? Why are you there? Who cares?
I'm here to collect merch. That's my number one priority at Consensus. We need more merch for the pod. So that's my number one goal. We don't have a booth or anything at Consensus this year, but it ends up just being where everybody is at the same time generally. And so these conferences are great times to meet vendors, partners, etc. in person, which sounds weird, but we do so much digitally now that meeting in person is meaningful and important, I think. So that's what a lot of people do. I'd say there's always way more builders than there is just random people, but there's quite a few people here just checking out, crypto, trying to learn, trying to immerse themselves into what's happening. You got rugged a little bit. I wish I could have screenshotted that where it froze. That was great. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, it's a great place to come and learn. I think what I've noticed even between Denver and here, when we talked from ETH Denver, I said, it was interesting because the energy in the conference had changed a little bit. Like we were for conferences in 22, everybody was, pretty doom and gloom. There was a lot of crap happening. There was, FTX and Terra Luna and 3 Arrows and all these things that happened. And so it was kind of discouraging in some ways for many people. But now I think we're all kind of the opinion that the people that are still here building either manage the down market properly and somehow, we're able to survive, or they're new entrants in the space that are building for the right reasons. And I think that's what's most exciting is, to your point, we're going to talk about this later, some of the fairly well-known, well-established companies that are quietly bullish. And you see that here. You see a lot of very sophisticated entities, amazing builders and entrepreneurs doing stuff that, was just beyond our realm of expectation even a year ago. So it's amazing.
One of the points of contention that came out after ETH Denver was that ETH Denver wasn't using Web3 solutions at a Web3 conference. So for example, they were using Eventbrite instead of like a Web3 planning module. Did Consensus pick up on that news? Is everything wacky Web3, like even to its detriment? No, okay.
No, and I mean, even ETH Denver, like there was a little bit more kind of Web3 angle than what was reported, I think. Eventbrite is still probably the most commonly used registration platform for Consensus, as well as it was in Denver. Truth be told, we got here yesterday, but our flight was like super late and weather, and then we sat on the tarmac forever. So I didn't even go yesterday. So I actually haven't been to the conference yet. So I can't tell you how much of it is Web3. I've seen some videos and photos of the venues though. It looks great. It's busy. A lot of people there. So we're on a panel in a little over an hour for EVM Next. So that'll be exciting, Beyond the Code. So anybody that's in town, if you happen to see this before then, come check us out. Talking about Borrowland, Evmos, Cosmos ecosystem. Yeah, and just building meaningful communities, engaged communities.
Exciting. Yeah. So the consensus on consensus is that it's less FUDdy than 2022.
Well, that remains to be seen. I think we'll find out what FUD exists. There's always FUD. But yeah, there's a lot more positive sentiment, I think, just in terms of expectations of the future. And again, you know, these conferences are great because sometimes the reason we do this podcast is really the only way that people learn about the space in between conferences is news, right? Whatever's on Twitter, whatever's on the news outlets. And often there's a lot of hyperbole. There's a lot of, we can call them misleading, article titles and all that stuff. And when you come to a conference, it's amazing because you can just take in the energy and, you know, the excitement and the entrepreneurship that exists in the space and cut a lot of the FUDdy bullshit, for lack of a better phrase. So it's a great place to be. Obviously, we try to fill the gaps in between conferences with no FUD Yourself, but yeah, it's a great place to be to learn.
Are getting bombarded with like SEC news while you're in a panel?
Not yet. We'll see. Hopefully, you know, kind of funny, not funny, but Do Kwon got served when he was on stage. So hopefully that never happens to us, but
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see what comes out of this consensus. For those who are at consensus, we have this daily news show, so you don't have to read the news. You can just go party and watch panels and that kind of thing, and then see our Twitter follow-ups so that you don't have to pay attention to what BRICS is doing. So in terms of news today, we're kind of going from like arguably worst to best. Okay. So we're going to go from FUDdy to hypey. Yeah. The first one... The first one is about the U.S. House Financial Committee Republicans. So essentially, this group has gone to try to prove that they have been working to debank, they being the SEC and the CFTC, they've been working to debank crypto. So this is a really weird news article because it's essentially a news article about somebody and talking about choke point and how nothing has changed since choke point. The component is that if we start using terms like crypto is being debanked, that increases or decreases the sentiment, but increases the FUD in the whole space.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, this is something that existed in the Obama days. This is one of the challenges with government overreach. Same thing with, you know, sanctions. We talk a lot about why BRICS, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but why BRICS even exists as a meaningful topic of conversation right now. A lot of that has to do with maybe the misuse a little bit of banking powers that the United States as the reserve currency had. And I think this is kind of along that same vein. Like, of course, the federal government needs to protect consumers from obvious scams and fraud and so on. But now, after all these years, that this is still happening, there's no other way to look at it rather than as a meaningful way to try to stifle innovation in that area. And I mean, to a certain extent, I kind of understand, right? The banking institutions are the incumbents. So they're the ones that, by supporting us, stand to lose the most potentially if they don't adapt to the technology. So I understand why they may not be super willing to support and perpetuate innovation in the space, but they also shouldn't be able to prevent it. And the argument that we make is banking is somewhat of a public good in Western capitalist economies, in a sense. Like, everybody should have access to banking, period. As long as you're not some sort of criminal or some crazy politically exposed person or something, then you should have access to banking as a business and as individuals. And so I can attest to this, actually. I got a call from my personal bank. So we've got corporate banks, and we deal with neobanks and crypto friendly, and we've got quite a few of them for different entities. But my personal bank sent me a letter in the mail the other day saying, hey, we're going to shut down your account if you don't call us within 3 business days. Well, the letter came after 3 business days, they didn't shut down my accounts, but I talked to them, and like they had 10 million questions. And I said, listen, like any assets that come into my fiat account come from regulated crypto entities, Coinbase in the US and in Canada, CoinSquare and Newton. They're fully regulated, fully compliant institutions. So like this should not be an issue. And then they were talking, they asked a whole bunch of questions. Do you trade on behalf of other people? Are you withdrawing money on behalf of other people? I'm like, really? Like, would you ask me that if my paycheck, came into my bank account, or if I withdrew some money from my stock investments, or whatever the case is? Anyways, long story short, somehow they were willing to accept my answers. So my account, at least for now, is functioning as usual. But again, it just kind of goes to show, like, I mean, I've had these accounts for years. This particular account has been almost a decade in good standing, and for some reason they apply an outsized risk component to it. And then based on my banking history at this bank, trying to get personal accounts in the US at Bank of America, Citi, etc., they won't. I've been flagged as a high risk person, even though I have incredible credit. I've never had any issues with any banks, never had any, it's just because I'm in the blockchain space. And so that's really unfortunate. So this does exist. This isn't just a headline. This isn't just something that, certain people have run into. It's almost everybody that's been around, for a little while and has meaningful revenues coming in from activities in the space is running into these things. And another anecdote quickly here, an immediate family member of mine was trying to do a deposit into crypto, from fiat into crypto in Canada, and went to the bank, and it took them hours to get the bank to send the wire. And then the bank sent the wire and they wouldn't release it. Like, they took the money out of this person's account but wouldn't release it because they figured it was probably fraud. And so then it took 2 days of phone calls and all this craziness and frozen accounts and a whole bunch of verifications and probably a blood sample and DNA sample before they released the transfer. Same thing.
The promise of their firstborn, like
it was unbelievable. And like, I understand the justification that they gave was this person happens to be a senior. And so when you see a senior putting a fairly sizable amount on a consistent basis into crypto, I guess, those are the people that are most exposed to some of these crypto scams, send us your money and we'll send you a check every month of your yield and all this nonsense. But again, where they're sending the money is a regulated IROC financial institution in Canada, which is the investment, what is it? Investment, I don't know. Anyways, Regulatory Organization of Canada. That's what it is for investments. And so it's similar to FINRA, and the SEC here is the Ontario Securities Commission and IROC. But anyways, I get it. Like, I understand how they're trying to protect people, but they're using that. I believe that's a bit of a bait and switch. They're using that as the justification for things that are really, in my opinion, malicious. So hopefully we see some change here.
That's what we talked about with Calgary bringing out their crypto security. I think the police and the RCMP is like, yes, at a surface level, that sounds like we might get scammed less, or it sounds like we might just be penalized more, right? It's hard to say what the motivation and what the outcomes actually are going to be, right? Regulation, enforcement sounds more like enforcement.
Well, I hate to walk around with a tin hat on, but I mean, this is
mine.
Very
it looks like a boat.
Yeah, I mean, when it's lightning outside, I become a target. It's all good. But I mean, it's interesting because you can't help but think, like, okay, this is one of the most disruptive technologies to global finance ever. And so I understand the reluctance, but at what length will they go? To what length will they go to try to prevent innovation? And we're seeing it. We're seeing it via very aggressive lobby. We're seeing it, via policy to a certain extent, regulatory policy based on lobby. And so we'll see. We'll see where this goes. But I think anytime that there's sunlight shone on some of these circumstances, usually it ends to better results, better outcomes.
We see almost the exact opposite also happening with BRICS. where they're actively adopting the CBDC of the digital yuan, where they are actively looking at how to improve peer-to-peer transactions, where they're actively looking at how to de-dollar, right? And so I actually slammed about 7 to 9 headlines together for this little ticker bar. But this is super interesting because there's so many political plays and there's just so much going on. So the upcoming BRICS summit is in June 23rd. There's mixed reports about if it's the 14th or 15th. So that seems weird to me too. Like maybe BRICS wasn't taken seriously enough for people to track the summit initially. I don't know why there would be contention about if it's the 14th or 15th, right? You just check which number the last one was and you move on. But really reputable news sources are reporting different numbers. So I don't know which one it is. And I went directly to their website and it's in Chinese. So I did not successfully navigate that.
You can't read Mandarin? Come on. Yeah, the BRICS thing is interesting to me. I think it's picking up steam and it's very, very hard to ignore now. I don't love it. Obviously, we've talked about this quite a bit. 19 other countries have requested to become part of this BRICS coalition.
Okay, for some clarity on that, 13 new countries have officially requested, and 6 additional countries have expressed interest, as in they will likely be going to the summit. However, it's very private as to who that is. So only, I believe, 5 nations have actually publicly said that they're doing that. 3 of which I believe were African nations. I believe Zimbabwe was on that list. It's just coming up on the bottom there. But they aren't really sure. And then the other political component of this is that I believe South Africa was asked by the African National Congress to leave the International Criminal Court because the International Criminal Court recently put out like a warrant on Putin. And basically all of Africa wants to say we stand with Russia.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that, but
no, but that's a big deal for de-dollarization. That's a huge amount of people who have been backed by the dollar for a long time.
It's a very big deal. Latin America, South America, also very dollar reliant economies in many ways, are some of the biggest proponents of BRICS, of course. And so it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. Again, my reluctance here is this a bait and switch? Are we saying, hey, let's de-dollarize and let's enable much more efficient transactions for peer-to-peer and for business to business, country to country, domestic and international transfers? Is that the real motivation, or is the motivation highly political and highly surveillance focused? And unfortunately, if you look at the countries that are really pushing this, China, Russia, India, certain African countries, surveillance and control are synonymous with most of their parties in power. And so it's almost impossible to expect to believe anything otherwise is going to come out of this thing. But we can't ignore it.
Did you hear about the gold? Did you look at the gold component? I think this is wild. So gold is experiencing more purchase than in decades, essentially. The price has gone up substantially, but they're finding that the majority of these purchases of gold are coming from BRICS nations.
Yeah. So, I mean, the U.S. still holds by far the largest stockpile of gold in the world. So I think if you want to get out from under the thumb of U.S. control, if that's the intention, gold is probably not the way to do it. It is a good historical store of value in many ways, but it doesn't function as a means of trade and transaction. Like, you're not going to, walk up and buy something with a brick of gold or a bunch of, gold nuggets or something. Like,
you're not.
Maybe I'm not. But anyways, that's, I do agree. I think we're going to see we've been seeing a similar flow into Bitcoin in a lot of ways as maybe an alternative to gold. It's not digital gold per se, but there's some interesting parallels. And I think Bitcoin, although it's also not very good for a means of transaction, it's a lot more efficient than gold. Like, if I wanted to send $1 million of gold, what are you going to do? Okay, you're going to get an armored car and drive it somewhere.
You're going to steal it from TD at the airport.
Yeah, steal it at the airport. Anyways, long story short, it's not very efficient or functional gold. Bitcoin also isn't super efficient, but it's orders of magnitude better than gold. So we'll see.
But I move on from the topic, I just have to state that we've talked about BRICS quite a few times. We talk about it being, long-term, a new world superpower, maybe de-dollarizing, maybe balkanizing the US dollar, etc. But when we think about there being 14 or 15 BRICS summits and over 20 countries who want to be involved with BRICS or are actively exploring involvement with BRICS, this leads me to something that you said almost a month ago now, JD, which is it might seem shocking to the average American when or if the dollar does de-dollarize. But if you've been paying attention for 15 years, speaking Chinese and Russian and Brazilian, it could happen way sooner than we're anticipating, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming in hot. Again, I think this is the worst possible situation for the U.S. And for most Western democracies, to be honest. So I hope they do something to revitalize confidence in the U.S.'s ability to be a meaningful financial power globally. But it's not looking good. I mean, the policies in the U.S. and the inflation and just our foreign policy right now is just really not building that confidence. And so I think it's actually accelerating the rate at which people are looking at alternates. And without the ability to sanction on a global stage and manage monetary policy the way that the U.S. has been for the last 100 years, it's a much different position of strength for the U.S. economy and U.S. businesses.
We had Mikhail on the other day from CERDIC, and he was talking about how historically economic superpowers, world economic superpowers, are only in play for about 100 years before they're overturned. Right?
Yep.
And America's over 100 years now. I believe he said 110, but I didn't fact check that. And so we are at a place where we might see revolution. And one of the things that I find really interesting here is we looked at having blockchain finance as a revolution against current finance. And as we see more institutions joining and more enforcement and more regulation, people will look to have a financial revolution somewhere else. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably not the revolution that we all expected in terms of changing global finance, but it's inarguably happening, whether we like it or not. And so I think it's important for us to keep talking about this, to be aware of what this means. Can we do anything individually? Probably not in the short term. I mean, you can lobby your Congress people and senators and local governments and so on to hopefully, start to be that voice. But I think we're in for an interesting reckoning. I mean, Xi very directly and clearly stated that the 100-year supremacy is coming to an end. And I think that's their primary focus right now is getting rid of U.S. led hegemony on global finance. And so it'll definitely be an interesting few years ahead of us, I think, as this kind of figures itself out.
So do you want some good news?
Yeah. Who doesn't want some good news to end the stream?
It's like medium good news. So we all know that MasterCard has been kind of leading in the crypto space in terms of large financial institutions. MasterCard has partnered with quite a few of the CBDCs. MasterCard, I believe, even partnered with Ripple. MasterCard has been thinking about blockchain for a long time, and Visa is trying to catch up. And this is really interesting and exciting because in a bear market, a lot of our fantastic, devs and business reps and so on and so forth may have lost their crypto jobs. But there's an institutional space for you now, and that might be Visa.
Yeah, I mean, this is another example, I think, of the incumbents that stand to lose a lot from the innovation. So they have two options: either fight it, which most have been doing for quite some time, or figure out how to join it. And I think MasterCard, to their credit, as a smaller institution than Visa globally, leaned into it early. And I think that's given them a pretty good head start. I suspect that with proper commitment and intention, Visa will catch up, obviously. In the end, this is good, in my opinion. Seeing these types of payment processors and credit providers participate meaningfully, publicly, and openly in the space, I think starts to establish some credence and credibility, I think, for them as futuristic type institutions and for the space and the technology of blockchain. So it's exciting. We'll see what Visa does. I mean, there's a lot of, on one hand, we're talking about debanking, the space, and then we see these payment processors and credit providers that are doing quite the opposite. They're leaning in and trying to build solutions around the
they also work
technologies.
internationally, though, right?
Yeah, so that's also exciting because, again, when you get someone like a MasterCard or Visa, you're not getting a single country, you're getting global presence. So
exactly.
Exciting times.
On a similar but not exactly the same note, Deloitte is also on a crypto hiring spree. So they have over 300 crypto, blockchain, and Web3 positions open on their LinkedIn for USA right now.
Yeah. I think Deloitte a couple of years ago, I think now, they partnered with Avalanche to look at how to deploy some things on subnets and so on, and how to support taxation and management and consultation around this technology. And so a lot of people don't realize about the big four accounting firms is a big chunk of their business is consultation. Obviously they do tax and audits and all this other stuff, but as accounting firms, they also do innovation consultation and digital transition consultation and a lot of things. And I think this just, again, shows during a bear market, a lot of these entities are very well served by investing in the space, and Deloitte is definitely doing that.
It was about a year ago, because Deloitte had not signed on before the last Avalanche Barcelona, which was in March.
That's right. Yes, that's right. It was after. Yeah.
It was shortly after. So it's around now, I believe, which is kind of cool because Deloitte also is using blockchain for their file management system, and they have a subnet, and they were one of the first big ones to get into something that's a little bit more alty. Although I don't know how alternative Avalanche is when they're in like Fox News all the time. But Avalanche Barcelona is next week, and I wonder how many Deloitte reps are going to go.
I don't know. Maybe if they were smart, they'd go there with their recruiting arm and try to find people that it would be a good way to like speed date potential candidates, just talk to them and get a feel for people in the space. And I bet you could find some pretty good hires. Unfortunately, I will not be at Barcelona. I'm super sad about that, having some crazy FOMO, but our visa situation is not quite finalized, so I can't leave and come back yet. So I'm going to be in LA at Medici next week instead, which I mean is also an amazing conference. Super excited. It's tacked on to the Milken conference for anybody that knows what that is. But it's always a good time. It will be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see what comes out of Avalanche Barcelona. I know Benki is making some awesome announcements. We have a few presentations going on in Barcelona too. So if you're there, make sure to come check out the Benki guys. I won't be there, but
bring your portfolio for Deloitte, maybe.
Yeah, maybe bring your your tax documents for Deloitte. Who knows? I don't know if they're going to actually even have a presence there. So
they should. I would be surprised if they didn't. I'm disappointed to not go to Barcelona this year. I mean, it would be great if we could, as a whole contingent, go, but it's not in the cards, right? But I wear this hoodie like constantly. It was the one you didn't even like, and I'm like, oh, this is the best, coziest thing.
They were the free ones, right? Yeah. I don't know why I didn't like it. I think maybe mine was too big and it just looked goofy on me. But and then I bought one of the other Avalanche hoodies there.
Yeah, they were nice.
Got WAGMI put on it, and now I put it on recently, and it's like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like I bought a way too big of a size, I think there. So it kind of just looks like a bed sheet on me now, which sucks. But my wife likes it at home for like, hanging out in the house. So it's good.
Yeah, for when you get huge.
Yeah, someday when I gain 50 pounds of pure muscle, then maybe it'll fit.
JD,
Anyways,
enjoy Consensus. If you have something to say FU to for Friday, let me know.
Well, I will have lots of things to say FU to, but anybody that's watching this, I'm also going to walk around. Hopefully, if we can figure out the tech solution here, maybe ask a few people what they want to say FU to this Friday, and we'll see if we can get a couple examples of that on the pod. But in the meantime, we're here every day, same time, 12:30 Eastern, Monday to Friday. Go FUD yourself. Like, share, subscribe, do all that shit. Help us get the word out. Help us help people understand what's actually happening in the space and get rid of some of the hyperbole. Kiara, have a beautiful day. Go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself, JD.